In this video, I'm going to be talking about another very critical element of our lawn care plan, and that is fertilizers. Let's get out of the weeds. If you like these videos and you're not already, please like and subscribe to this channel to help me get to 1,000 subscribers. I really do appreciate it. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving you a good general overview of lawn fertilizers so that you can go and just have a good solid foundation whenever it comes time to actually start giving our lawn the nutrients it needs. So whenever we're talking about our fertilizers that we're going to be putting in our lawn, there's 4 nutrients that I want to talk about and just give you a general overview. And those ingredients are nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and iron. So when we're talking about nitrogen is really going to be what really gives our grass its nice dark green color. It's going to help our grass to grow thicker, grow stronger, to really help it to grow quicker. And so nitrogen is going to be focusing more on kind of the top growth, what you see actually with your eyes above ground. Now, when we get into phosphorus is mostly going to be for helping our grass to develop a strong root system. So phosphorus is going to be more for what's under the ground. And then potassium is going to be kind of just an overall grass health. And so potassium is one thing we look for whenever we have like lawn disease, to help prevent and to help our grass recover from lawn disease. And lastly, iron. Iron is one thing that you'll see kind of thrown into different fertilizers that's going to help try to get your lawn just a little bit deeper, darker green. Before you ever go to the store and buy a bag of fertilizer to put down on your lawn, it is critical that you know how many square feet your lawn is. You don't want to just go out and buy a bag that might cover 10,000 square foot when you have a 2,000 square foot lawn and you just put the bag on it. Misuse of fertilizer can be very damaging to your grass. So before you go to the store, we need to find out how big your lawn is. This can be easily done by online applications. I know there's one called measuremylawn.com. It's a very easy, like Google Maps. You type in your address and you can just kind of pick your points and then it'll give you the square footage. The reason that we want to know the size of our lawn is because this is going to be dependent on how much fertilizer we're actually putting down. Now, when we're talking about putting down fertilizer on our lawn, we're going to be putting that down based off of how many pounds per 1,000 square feet. Now, there are multiple ways to calculate this out, and I'm going to walk you step by step just to show you how you get kind of the in-depth calculation of knowing exactly how much nutrients we're putting down with a fertilizer application. But some of the big name brands in lawn care, like Scott's, for example, they make it so much easier for homeowners because they take out a lot of the math for you. As long as you know what your square footage of your lawn is, you can just go to the store and you can find the bag that matches whatever your lawn square footage. So if you have a 5,000 square foot lawn, you can go and each bag of fertilizer will typically tell you how much square footage it covers. And so you know exactly how much fertilizer you need to buy. Then when it comes to applying it on your lawn, you can simply get one of the Scott's broadcast spreaders, and what will happen is it has a big orange dial knob on it. And so what you will do is you will turn this orange dial knob, and depending what number that you have it set to determines how much fertilizer it pushes through to give you the proper application. Then as a homeowner, all you have to do is read the back of a fertilizer bag and it'll give you that number that you set that dial to. You load up the hopper and then you just spread it across your lawn, giving you the proper adequate application for that fertilizer. So now for this example, we're going to just use a 5,000 square foot lawn as the example. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to know, and I need to get a bag of fertilizer that covers 5,000 square foot. Now, when you look at a bag of fertilizer, you're going to see 3 numbers on the front of every fertilizer bag. And now when I talked about earlier, when I talked about the three main nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, those represent those three numbers on the front of fertilizer bags. So when we look at the front of this bag, we see 2807. And now each of those numbers represents the percentage of the bag for each of those nutrients. Now the first nutrient listed there, the 28, is nitrogen. So now there's 28% of that bag is nitrogen. The next number is 0. That's for phosphorus. So there is no phosphorus at all in that fertilizer bag. The last number is 7. 7% of that bag is potassium. And so that's where you get the numbers. On any fertilizer bag that you look at, you're going to see those three numbers. And they'll all be different numbers, but they represent the percentages of those nutrients in that bag. So the front of the bag says that it covers 5,000 square foot. So I know that the whole entire bag is going to cover my lawn. So I just need one bag to cover my entire lawn. But now I need to know, well, how much do I have to put down? Like, how quickly do I just put this through the spreader? If you just dump it on all over your lawn, you're not getting an even application. So how do I need to put it down to get myself an even application? And so this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, was whenever we put down fertilizer, we put it down at pounds per 1,000 square feet. And that's the rate that you're typically going to follow to figure out your calculations for your nutrients. So our first thing we need to figure out is how many pounds do I need to put down of that fertilizer for every 1,000 square foot. So what I first need to do is I need to figure out how many times does 1,000 go into the size of my yard. For a 5,000 square foot lawn, 1,000 goes into it 5 times. Now what I want to do, since I've broken it up into 5, I want to take the total weight of the bag. So for this Scott's fertilizer that I have here, the weight of this bag is 13.35 pounds. So I take that number and divide it by 5. And this gives me how many pounds per 1,000 square feet. And so in this example, we get just under 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet. I think it factors out to like 2.67 pounds per 1,000 square feet is a just nice even application of fertilizer to cover that entire lawn. We can take it one step further, because now that we know that number there, the 2.67, we can then figure out how much nitrogen we're actually putting down on our lawn. So in this case, you're going to take that 2.67 and you're going to times it by the percentage of nitrogen in the bag, which for us is 28%. So we take 28% times 2.67, and that gets us just around 0.75 pounds of nitrogen going on our lawn. Now the reason figuring out how much nitrogen your lawn is getting is important, because typically we want to get between 3 to 5 pounds of nitrogen throughout our entire lawn care season. And so what you're typically going to see is a lot of fertilizers fall somewhere between that 0.75 all the way up to about 1 to even 1.25, depending on the fertilizer that you're putting down. And so you're getting somewhere between 3/4 of a pound to 1.25 pounds, somewhere in that range, and with a typical fertilizer. So now if we use the Scott's 4-step program as our example, if you follow the Scott's 4-step program, which you'll see in literally any hardware store, you're going to be doing 4 fertilizer applications throughout the course of the entire year. Now, if each of those applications averages 0.75 pounds of nitrogen per each application, well, if you do that 4 times, you're getting 3 pounds of nitrogen for your entire year. Instead of having to do all the math that I just went through and really figuring that out, the people from Scott's really just did a service to the homeowner by making it so simple, where you can just, if you're like, hey, I'll just follow their 4-step program. I'll walk out, okay, it's time to throw it down, get that first bag, and then throughout the year from doing those 4 steps, you're going to get right around 3 pounds of nitrogen on your lawn, and you're going to have a nice healthy lawn just by following their nice 4-step program. And so that's why you've seen that year after year after year when you go into a hardware store, just because it's a nice, easy, simple way for people to get started with lawns. So typically in this channel, I go out, and when it's time for me to fertilize my lawn, I go out and I buy all different types of bags. I have used Scott's products in the past, and they've been fine. But I do mix it up and try all different things because there's many different types of fertilizers. And so you want to just try, as you get kind of some more information and knowledge about how this kind of all works, it gives you a greater understanding. So maybe you start with the Scott's 4-step, but then you're like, oh, I can calculate how many pounds of nitrogen I'm getting on an application. So if I can go pick out any other bag. So you feel kind of more free to go and try a different type of fertilizer. So now if you don't want to follow just a easy 4-step program, there's another easy way to really kind of time out your fertilizer applications, and that is following the major holidays throughout the year. And so beginning with Easter, put down an application, then we go to Memorial Day, then July 4th, then we have Labor Day, and then we have around Halloween. And so if you kind of follow those 5 holidays, put down fertilizer somewhere on or near those dates, it'll typically be spread out far enough between your fertilizer applications, and it'll also get you the adequate nutrients that your lawn needs for the entire season. Now, the last thing I want to cover in this video is the different types of fertilizers that you're going to be seeing whenever you go to the store. Now, typically there's going to be 3 main types. Now, there's all different types of fertilizers that have all different nutrients and all kinds of things added to them, but I want to stick with kind of 3 main ones that you're going to see in any general hardware store. And that's going to be your synthetic fertilizers, your more natural fertilizers, and your weed and feeds. So beginning with synthetic fertilizers, these are going to be what's you're mostly going to see in a lot of your stores. Now, the Scott's 4-step program, those are all going to be synthetic fertilizers. And one way to kind of know just by looking at it is most of the time with synthetic fertilizers, the first number for that nitrogen percentage is typically going to be like in the 20s or higher. And that's going to be a big indicator, hey, this is a synthetic fertilizer. Now, with synthetic fertilizers, they're typically going to go down at a rate somewhere between that 3 pounds to 5 pounds is where it's typically going to fall in. And then with synthetic fertilizers, you want to get those watered in. Now, with natural fertilizer, this is what I got started on. Now, a big well-known brand with natural fertilizer is Milorganite. It is, if you type in Milorganite anywhere, like you'll see it everywhere. It's hugely popular. And so a lot of brands have made copycats kind of based off of what Milorganite does. And now typically with those natural fertilizers, they are going to be like these little black pellets. You'll see they're kind of usually really fine. And what they're advertised as with the natural fertilizers is most of the time on the bag, it'll say non-burning, because that's one thing with people who don't typically do lawn care or new to lawn care. They're always like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to burn my lawn out. Well, it's not as easy to do that as long as you're kind of doing the calculations like we were and putting down the rates right. If you know the size of your lawn and how much fertilizer you need to get, you're never really going to run too much of a risk of burning out your lawn. But the people who make natural fertilizer, they capitalize kind of on this fear. And so with natural fertilizer, you can look at it and be like, oh, it's non-burning, so you can just throw it all over your lawn. Well, that's not really the case, but that's what they advertise. But typically with a natural fertilizer, the numbers are going to be a little bit lower, especially with the nitrogen. A lot of times the nitrogen percentage is going to be somewhere around 5 or 6%. And so because of that, to get up to a nice full nutrient application, natural fertilizers typically go down at some kind of rate between like 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet all the way up to like, I've seen like 16 pounds per 1,000 square feet. And so you're just putting a lot more product down to get that amount of nitrogen that you typically get in a synthetic. Now with natural fertilizers, a lot of times they'll say they don't need watered in, where with synthetics, you want to make sure they get watered in with about a 1/2 inch of water. So whether that's by irrigation or timing it up with rain. But with natural, they say you don't have to water in, even though I would still personally make sure that I'm trying to get it watered in good with any fertilizer application. Then lastly, I want to touch on weed and feed. Now, typically with your weed and feed products, they are going to be a synthetic fertilizer mixed with a herbicide of some sort. So now with the Scott's program, for example, since we've used that here, Scott's on their step 1 is fertilizer with a crabgrass pre-emergent, like we talked about last week. With their step 2, it's typically a weed and feed, so that's for a post-emergent, so for the weeds that you already see. Now, for me personally, I try to keep my fertilizer applications separate from my weed control applications. This is simply because what I want to do is I want to target the specific weeds that I'm actually seeing. I typically don't want to put a blanket application over my whole lawn targeting weeds that I don't even necessarily know if I have a problem with. So I like to keep my fertilizer application by itself, and then I go, and when I start to see that there's weeds in my lawn, I have a specific liquid weed control that I have that I'm like, okay, I'm going to target this specific weed. I don't just typically like to just do a blanket weed control application before I even know if I really have a weed problem. And so with that, I'd like to thank you guys for watching yet another video. I'll see you guys next time when we get out of the weeds into a beautiful lawn.